Welcome this morning to C.A.R.s Coffee in Christ, and this is the weekly podcast of our team here at Automotive Royale in Mountains, Oklahoma. I'm your host, Ross Turner, serve as our corporate chaplain here, and we'll be hosting our 10th episode of Season 2 in our podcast this morning. We've all got our coffee/energy drinks this morning. I think we're starting to elevate our coffee game. Our owners got nitro this morning. We're getting better here. So I'm excited for us to discuss today kind of a theme that's really important to kind of how we compare business and the church and our work together. Is, we've kind of coined the term business tree in our company. It's kind of a merging of those two things together. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today with the concept of unity and building unity. So we're going to talk about body work today and building unity both in business, company work, and then also, of course, the goal of trying to do that in church work as well, and easier said than done. These are challenging things. Sounds simple to build unity, but it's really tough. So we're going to talk about how to do that, how to go about that for success in both areas this morning. We're joined by 4 men this morning, which is super fun. We've got 2 Chris's with us. Chris E. here on the left of my screen. Chris E. is a friend of our company, motorcycle enthusiast, student at Victory College. He's doing a little bit of everything right now. We got Chris L. over there across, top right of my screen, and Chris is a mechanic and technician for our company, does our paint and body work as well. Ray Lawson, our business manager, top left screen there, and our CEO and co-founder Joshua King there, top center of our podcast. So welcome, men, this morning. Thanks for coming, and we're gonna kind of jump into, I think it's a fairly challenging subject. It really is tough to build unity. There are shortcuts people like to try to take. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then there's just sometimes people just kind of settle and say, we're never going to have that, kind of thing. And so we want to talk about how can we build towards that this morning. So we'll just jump right into our first question about just saying, what are the universal factors, kind of without, thinking about particular kinds of businesses or, large, small churches, whatever it might be. What are some of the universal factors you all think that leads to unity in a company setting, especially? Start with business. What like a car that runs smoothly, everything's working properly, everything's working together to kind of lead that car from, start to finish, and to do it smoothly and hopefully enjoyably too, right? Not just functionally, but enjoyably. In a similar way, what has to happen in a company to really build unity for it to work effectively and enjoyably together? What do you all think? Again, from small to big, large corporation to small startup, like what has to be present in a company to have unity for that experience to happen? What do you all think?
I think it really starts with understanding, like for a car, understanding what fits where, the shapes that we have, different cylinders, different sizes. It's the same thing with people, different people have different gifts and talents that they are good at, and they just have to fit where they are good at, like utilizing those gifts that God gave them. And then along with that, programming is a very good thing, right? Yeah. Nowadays we have cars that are programmed through the roof, sometimes over-programmed, but if you program it to do the right thing, it'll do the right thing for you. Yeah. And it's the same thing in a business, I think.
Well, that's a fantastic thought. I mean, one, kind of putting together the people part of unity, right? And then the parts part, right? That those things have to be congruent. Right? I mean, we'll see how that's also important to the church. I mean, that's exactly what the apostle talks about, Paul talks about. There's parts, there's people, those things have to work together for there to be unity, at least to start with unity. The actual working together part's challenging sometimes too, even though you might even have the right people and the right parts in place, but you got to start there. That's really good. Anyone else? What's a universal factor or factors that just really have to be present for there to be unity, Chris?
I think roles and goals.
Yeah.
There's different roles everybody has to play, and they've all got to funnel into the same goal. And that can be a challenge, having a well-defined goal. and the diversity of everybody's different role to reach that same goal.
That's great, man. Yeah, I think, like you're saying, roles is that a lot of times people is kind of famous in businesses and especially in churches, they're not defined. There's no job description at all. Most senior pastors I know don't have job descriptions. And that's the strangest thing, because they're, in many ways, what the church is revolving around functionally, and they don't even have defined job descriptions, defined roles. So if you don't have a defined role and you don't have clear goals, you're definitely not going to succeed, for sure. It's not going to build unity, at least. That person might succeed individually, but the company itself or the business itself probably won't succeed functionally. Yeah, that's great. Great thought. Anyone else, Josh?
When you think about, it's probably easier to think in terms of a car, right? Like everything has a purpose and a place. And that starts with the initial design, or what is that car to do? Is it a grocery hauler, or are we talking about an off-road vehicle? Is it a performance track vehicle? All of those are different purposes. So you design then to that purpose. So, is it a show car that you're going to approach that entire design and build completely different than you are to have a daily? We have a great customer that's building a daily with us. And we're kind of encouraging them not to go the show car route, because so they'll actually want to use it, right? Like there's some restraint that is needed in some of that design. And then you move on to the purpose. Every single part on that vehicle has a purpose. It's defined, and it actually has an order to its assembly or the work that we do, like certain things, so you don't have to do it over and over and over, create efficiency, right? Like you do it in a very specific order of operations, right? And I think in business, many times, like you said, ambiguity or lack of vision, if it's at the leadership level, or lack of design, like how we put this together, it can be a lot of trial and error and a lot of waste that way, right? In the early stages of a business, you're pretty much in that category. But eventually, businesses make their way into a structure, a design, a lot of specificity, just like you see on a manufacturing line from the major, car manufacturers. I mean, everything is dialed to a bolt, and specifics on that. You'd hope that both businesses and churches make their way there, but not always. It really depends on, the care of that. One thing. I think it's a purpose. There is design, and there is a vision of what that body needs to do, and every piece is important. Like that I think is kind of the picture Jesus gave us of the body of Christ, is that every piece has a purpose, and it's very, very important. And use our own human body to do it, but in the term of a car, like, one bolt could mean your engine falls out. There's every little bit is super important.
The irony of the situation is, like, whenever a business is doing what it's supposed to do, people refer to it as a well-oiled machine.
Right. Yeah.
So, and if you look at the irony of, even like a motor that's in a car, I mean, if there's, before you can even consider starting that motor, there has to be certain elements. Which, in a business, those are the tools that you need to actually start the business. I mean, for like, you can plug anything you want in from you, but for a motor or an engine, you've got to have air, fuel, and spark. Okay, to start a business, you've got to have whatever business you're starting up, the elements that are needed to start. Okay, then you've got to have a process. Well, the air comes in one place, fuel comes in another. It creates the spark. The spark does what it does. Valves open, exhaust goes out, and the ultimate product that you want out the end is a very clean, well-burned exhaust fumes. Okay, but in the midst of all of that, I mean, your pistons perform a job, your valves perform a job, your valve springs perform a job, and it's kind of ironic, and once again. And it's all the little things that make a difference. in a successful business than it is, some businesses can operate, but to be totally successful, it's the little things.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, there's something, that a lot of people may not even know about in the valve train of a car. It's called a valve keeper.
Yeah.
And it's a little thing. It's about a 1/4 inch big, a 1/4 inch tall, and a 1/4 inch wide. And 2 of them sit inside a retainer. And they're just loose.
Yeah.
They're not glued in. They're not fastened in. There's nothing to them other than these 2 little, cone-shaped pieces that are in this retainer that sit at the top of the stem of this valve. Okay? You remove one of those, it's catastrophic to that motor.
Yeah.
Because that valve's going to fall out. It's going to make contact with the piston, which in that particular case is probably going to take out a rod, which is going to take out a crank, which is going to put us a hole in the side of the block or the oil pan.
Full domino effect, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the thing that is, I think, is key is, once again, having the elements, having a process. Each thing, like Chris had said, each thing understanding its role. A piston has a role, a rod has a role, rod bearings, cam has a role. I mean, everything in that motor has a role.
Yeah. And
if it doesn't do its job properly, that motor doesn't run.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, I mean, there's nothing that really showcases the epitome of unity.
Yeah.
Than understanding how a combustion engine works, because everything has to work in harmony.
Yeah.
I mean, you can take a distributor and you can move it 3 degrees in the wrong direction, and now that motor does not run in harmony the way that it should.
Yeah. Yep. That's fantastic, Ray. And that's, again, I think that the analogy of seeing a vehicle, of kind of a machine, where everything has to be working together for it to work as a whole.
Right.
And I think, again, that analogy works well for business, though if we would think more through that, we would probably think more of like what everyone's supposed to be doing, but then we kind of get it skewed a lot because we don't think like that. And we kind of dismiss things, or we forget about things, we misplace things, or the same thing happens with people, right? Or with the process of the business, right? Things get left and forgotten, and the vision's lost. And whatever.
So I'll have a little fun, right? Adding on to his analogy, right? And let's just take the engine, and then let's run that analogy up against business, right? Okay, so we talk about the parts, but there's also fuel, oil, air.
Yeah.
Right. Spark. Right. Part of what I've learned about business. I mean, everyone kind of thinks about money as the core of business, but that's just fuel. Yeah. Right. So there's fuel to a business. When I hit the gas, if I have more money, I can invest. I can accelerate my business. If I pull back on that, then I'm essentially going to slow it down. And a lot of businesses fail because they lack customers. There's no inbound, and you can only run that for so long or it'll die. Yeah. Right. And then the second side of it is you've got oil. The friction between parts, or the friction between people, can also fail an engine. Cause it to cease, cause it to stop working. And the friction, the oil, serves a purpose of forgiveness, grace. A lot of people would call this culture, but culture is just the fuel pump, right? And if you don't actually have forgiveness and grace to one another, if you can't actually work with others and move beyond, I would say, the childish things of offense,
right?
The childish things of I am going to be upset about correction, or I'm going to be upset about someone not listening, whatever that is, whether wherever you are in the organization, that's oil. And you got to have good oil, and occasionally you got to sit down and talk it out, which I would say is an oil change. You get new clean oil, and you kind of come out of that, and you feel like, oh wow, I feel good, right? And we got to have these things. Got to do it pretty regularly on an engine. But what are these other things? What is spark? Well, for me, at least in business, that's been innovation.
Yeah.
If you were kind of doing that same thing, the ideas that we have, the creativity, I think a lot of that comes from the Holy Spirit, but that creativity that makes a business alive, I think is the spark of that company. Yeah. Some companies are really good on spark. I think we are one of those. We're just doing new things, and innovation and ideas are free flowing here. And that's a healthy, hey, we got spark, we can move on. right? But I think the most interesting piece is air. Because, Ray, you've said this, an engine is just a giant air pump.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the better the engine flows is the air. Now, the air is the Lord. Now, people wouldn't give that to it, but the Lord promised us seed time and harvest. And business is just a execution of a principle of the Lord, which is people sow into a product and they reap a harvest. Or they sow into a service and they reap a reward, right? And that is actually the Lord that brings and blesses businesses. And the more you inject the Lord into what you do and how you manage and who you ultimately put, like at C.A.R., we put the Lord above all, right? He's essentially our executive. And he is our board, and by that, we have plenty of air in our engine.
Yeah.
Right? We'll always be corrected on how we're treating people, our ethics, things that need to happen correctly and rightly. I would say this would be like your righteousness or your right judgment. Yeah. That would be the air of an engine. So if a business is making a bunch of bad decisions because they seek no wisdom from God, they will fail. 90% or more of startups fail. Why? Because they don't seek the Lord. If they did, I think their success rates would be crazy high.
Yeah.
Because wisdom comes in. And wisdom doesn't come from man, wisdom comes from the Lord. That is air. Yeah. What we've done by just saying, hey, Lord, you just tell us what to do and go. Yeah. I mean, we're putting blowers on this sucker. I mean, it is going to go.
Forced induction.
It's forced induction, right? Yeah. It's at a greater power level than what's naturally available.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we've got, it's not just the pieces and parts. Yeah. It's also life. It's also what gives it life.
That's right. And you guys are, again, I think really kind of handle it, the question great. It's exciting to kind of hear all the different pieces of that answer because it shows how much has to happen for something to work in unity and to work. Like you said, you can have it all there, but it doesn't work. It doesn't move, right? And then if it starts to move, it causes friction and problem, right? There's a lot of things that have to happen for unity and effectiveness together. And you brought up a number of things that cause disunity and dysfunction and breakdown, right? And we know, there's a lot of companies that have been around for a long time because they continue to innovate, right? They continue to grow, right? I think of, one of my favorite businesses that I love to watch is football. It's a business. It's not really a sport more than it's a business. And even in college now, it's a business. And when you think about the coaches that have lasted long, it's because they evolved with the times. Well, the ones that didn't, they began to lose, and then they stopped coaching, right, for whatever reason. And they were very effective for a long period of time. Then they started being completely ineffective, which is strange because they didn't forget how to coach, right? It shows innovation the spark was lost in a sense, right? And the same thing happens in other businesses, right? C.A.R.s, like great companies that were like the standard for a long time just stopped innovating and they died. Yeah. The brands just died. And so you see these kind of things are needed for an effective business, not just the parts or the people, but innovation and spark and life to it too. So it's a great point you guys are making.
Funny about that is there's a power curve that you look when you're looking at horsepower and torque. And that innovation curve, there's also a business curve that looks identical to a torque curve. Yeah. And it kind of goes up and then it runs down. Yeah. Right. And there's eventually this point where friction takes over and physics take over in an organization and that innovation starts to die and work against you.
That's right.
And the thing that you're trying to sustain it with is what will kill you in that business. And you have to, the only way to circumvent that is to start something new or have a new spark.
That's right.
And intermittently, engines are just sparking to spark to spark to spark to continual. And if you don't continue that on, you will die as an organization or a company. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, it's just a matter of time. And that's really the question, is like just a matter of time. I'll give one small example, then we'll move on. But my favorite coach to ever watch is Nick Saban. Not because I love him. I despise him in many ways. He beat most of my teams all the time. But I really respect him because of how innovative he was. And he kept growing with the game. And people would keep saying, look how he's changed with the game. And he would keep winning over 3 decades. That doesn't happen. Most people win in one decade and then never win again. So it just, again, shows progression and shows spark continuing. He hired people he hated, to keep winning. It's just, again, it shows a lot of flexibility too, which I think is another piece. You have to be flexible with things to allow them to kind of conform to where you must go sometimes. It can't always be so rigid and fixed in some sense too. Well, bring up my next question, which I think would segue pretty well, is, what's the difference between building unity and forcing conformity? Because there's a lot of people that think unity is everyone just kind of thinks alike. That's more uniformity than unity, right? It's not the same thing, right? So what's the difference between having unity with a bunch of parts instead of making everyone the same part, right? Because there's a lot of people that think, well, authority from the top down creates unity. So what's the difference between building healthy unity and avoiding kind of this unhealthy, and in some ways toxic kind of uniformity or conformity?
I think it's building relationships.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was younger, which was a long time ago, there was a gentleman that was kind of mentoring me, and one of the things that really stuck in my head was, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah.
It's a situation where even if it's like you're looking, assembly line work or whatever it may be. I mean, if you're active in the job site and you're interacting with your people and you find out that you have employees that have children and they have certain interests and things like that, or they may have things in their life that are complicating. And the fact that you have conversations with them, get to know them, and you swing by from time to time and say, hey, how's your kids? How are your wives? Hey, how's that situation turning out for you, kind of thing. Those people want to perform at a higher level for you because now they have a respect for you because you've shown them the respect of getting to know them and building a relationship with them. Another thing is, and it falls right into that is, each person that you're in a relationship with, especially from a management standpoint, you have to understand each individual as a person.
Yeah.
You can't cookie cutter. And that's where you're talking about where authority comes down and you're saying, hey, it has to be this way, it has to be this way, you have to be this way, you have to be this way. Well, you don't get the same reaction from each person. Some people, and I've experienced this, some people, they're not doing their job, you come out and you chew their butt, and then for the next 2.5 weeks they bust their butt and they perform better than they've ever performed. Other people, you come out and do that and they completely shut down. You get nothing from them.
Yeah.
And, so if you're going to try to be that authoritative person that goes straight down and says, I'm going to handle everybody the same. I want everybody to be the same. I want everything to be uniform. You're not going to be successful.
You will not be successful unless you're working with parts.
Correct.
Right? Like that works with parts and mechanics. It doesn't work with people.
If every part in an engine was a piston,
that's right.
Yeah,
there you go.
Nothing would work.
Let's go off of that, right? So I've been thinking about that while we're talking. Is like if you're a bolt manufacturer, there's a really famous one that makes great bolts, right? I love their product, but let's say that they took instead of having it be raw metal that they pulled in and built those bolts, they started taking suspension parts, already built pistons, engine blocks, and broke them down. How wasteful if they didn't recognize that was a really good engine block and they started cutting it up to make bolts.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what we're doing in the church. And that's what we're doing in companies is be a bolt. Because that's what I need. I want 1,000 bolts.
Right.
But I just cut up an engine block. What do you mean you cut up a V8? You know how much that V8 is worth?
What you do?
It's unrecognized giftings from the Lord and people.
Right.
That takes a lot of listening and discovery and inquisitiveness. I think leaders need to ask a lot more questions and listen a lot more to passion and understand people's giftings, and then bring out those giftings. Understand that that person was built as an engine block. They'll be foundational to your engine, right? Like, understand that this person was built to be a light. Don't try to make them a piston, right? Like, or don't try to form them into something else. I think this is really apparent when you look at auto manufacturers, for instance, like Toyota's approach to their manufacturing line. So to your analogy is, I'm going to give autonomy to the person closest to the work to be able to make effective changes that improve things for the whole company.
Right.
So I heard from a really great leader I respect said, hey, people that are most likely correct are the closest to the work. So they should be winning arguments 9 times out of 10 because they are the closest to the hands on the thing, understanding what the real problem is, And so as we get removed from that, sometimes it makes sense. You're a bolt manufacturer and you say, I want you to make a bolt. It makes sense because I want a lot of bolts. But when you're the one doing the work and you're seeing that an engine block is getting cut up and you're trying to convey that to them, hey, maybe it's better we buy bar stock. Like, maybe it's better we buy some raw metal. Like, I think it would be cheaper. Like, I think it would be more efficient. And at Toyota, you see the results in the market. They lead because they've empowered people to use their own gifts to better understand and make changes to better the organization. They're letting them be more them. We don't need less of people being them. We need more of that, but we need them in the right role. And I think it's just we think like that too much in the church. Everybody needs to be Mr. Rogers.
That's right.
And we can't have any William Wallace. Right in there.
Absolutely. And again, I think because one is safe, the other one's not. Right, when you think about it, like they're
playing
better.
They're playing lots of bolts. We have a bolt business.
That's right. That's what they're going for. If they whether they know it or not, right? They're going for safety and that kind of security and that kind of known commodity instead of maybe listening and what's really there, right? And building what's around them, right? So there's some great pieces there. I love what you also said about like the person closest is the one that needs to be giving feedback and whatnot. I don't want to call out McDonald's, but I'm going to. But you see this happened in the recent product release of McDonald's with their new burger, and it's gone viral, where the CEO is shown eating the new product and not knowing how to eat the burger, and it's like the weirdest thing you've ever seen. You're like, he's promoting this burger that it doesn't look like he likes, and it doesn't look like he's ever even eaten one before, and it just shows this disconnect from it completely, right? From the people and from the product, right? And it looks more like, to me, like that kind of uniformity model instead of this unity model. Like, it just shows that kind of uniformity mentality of, you're just going to do what I say and let me do what I want all the time. And again, that's kind of a misuse of sovereignty. God gives us some levels of sovereignty, others more dominion than others, but a proper use of it listens a little bit, right? And doesn't not listen and just talks. So I think, again, this piece of unity is when there's buy-in from people and there's an agreement of, hey, I know my role, I see your role, I respect that role, but hey, I see your role, I respect you too, right? And then there's a buy-in together, then there's unity together, because there's a mutual respect and a mutual buy-in on what you're doing together and for the individual too. So I think it's more than just the function. Ray brought it up. There's a relational respect. And I think it's interesting, businesses seem to function better when they work like a church. See, when they actually look like a family, right? When they promote more than products, they promote people and culture. And I would say sometimes churches are better when they have some kind of business in mind, right? Too, sometimes they just become businesses, unfortunately, most of the time, I think. So we'll kind of segue into that. But I thought a good reminder of what we all just talked about unity instead of uniformity, was what it says in 1 Corinthians 12. And it says, for just as the body is one and has many members, all the members of the body, though many, are one body. So it seems like to me, to have a unity mindset, it's not that you can't be different. It's that you have to literally have the same mindset and have the same buy-in to be the same, togetherness all the time, while still being that part, while still doing that function. Again, going back to Alabama football, which I thought was so interesting about how they were successful. But there was this kind of sense one time, there was a reporter, after they won a couple national championships, there was a reporter that came to interview the other coaches, not the head coach. And they went into the weight room and they came up to the strength coach, and he was folding a towel on a bench press. And they said, "So what are you doing?" He goes, "I'm getting ready to win a national championship." It was so interesting. That was the mindset of what he was doing. And that's what I think the church and the business is. That's what unity looks like. He's doing his job, but he's unified in the purpose as one mind, one body, one focus.
Take that back to like a Formula One car. Like, what is like the wishbone suspension doing? It is winning. It is winning the race.
Yeah.
What is the CPU doing? It is winning the race. What is the guy sitting in the seat doing that is monitoring those components? He's winning a race.
Yeah.
But when it's loose, so let's say you have a bolt, I would say that is when someone is just going to a job.
That's right.
I'm just like checking in. I'm coming to a job. I'm not.
That's right.
I need a paycheck. They're a rattly bolt. They're the loudest complainers in an organization. They're the people that put fear in the front lines of a war. They're those that are not tied to the mission. They're not bound and bolted well into the structure of what's going on.
That's exactly right.
And they're not aware of the context around them. Like car, for instance, the Lord has sent us into the world to build the most affordable car for families across the world so that car burden drops dramatically across the world. That is our mission. That is what we are doing here. And if people don't understand that, they'll think, "Oh, I'm going to a job and I'm doing my little thing," but you are not tied in to world-changing effect. Yeah. And that's what we're doing. It may not look like that right now, but like you said, the folding of the towel may not look like that, but if you understand that's the Lord, what the Lord told us to go do. And all along the way, love people.
That's right.
All along the way, do some form and factor of loving people around vehicles the best you can.
That's right.
That's really important work. But if you don't know that, and you're not kind of bound to the mission, you don't understand it, then you're going to be a rattly bolt, or that suspension could come undone, and it could, in Formula One, it could kill people. Right? It's that's why everyone's so dialed in. Is they're protecting the lives of the other drivers and their own drivers. Because it's not just about winning, it's also, there's a lot at stake here. Yeah. And so that's really, really important. I love, kind of as you were talking, because it's really, really true. And it explains a lot of breakdown within organizations. I just see it all the time.
The mentality part is the unity that I am different, distinct here. I'm a different part. Like I was the strength, I think it was like the assistant strength coach. He was managing the facility. He was managing the program of weight training. But he saw that connected to the winning of the whole organization, right? And the same is true of any business or any church. There's a distinction of role and job, but there's got to be a connection to the unity of the entirety of everything and a mutual respect.
Another breakdown is in leaders, I call it fear-based leadership. So it's like, I'm going to fear over you and create the fear into you, and we run our militaries like this, but it's kind of like taking a hammer to that Formula One and just like the person in charge going out there with a mallet and just whacking stuff and be like, this needs to be fixed, this needs to be fixed. We're breaking it, right? Yeah. Instead, we need to be more of the great technician.
That's right.
Who would go in and size up, listen, pay attention, understand, use wisdom, and then apply.
Yeah.
Pressure and force where is needed.
Yeah.
There's a very different approach. You wouldn't do that on, you'd probably get tackled on a Formula One line if you did something like that.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, but we do that in business.
Yes.
We come over the top and we try to put the fear of God in people, and it isn't good leadership. What it is a mallet to a fine-tuned machine.
That's right.
What we have to do is listen well, think well, and then apply pressure as needed. And the same is true, I think, of the individual components. Yeah. They also play a really, really important part to self-correct. and to allow for flexibility and movement. Ball joint's a good example. It's not just so rigid because its job needs to be a little flexible.
That's right.
Well, I think one of the key elements that we haven't discussed yet, and it really falls right into the Formula One car and the loose bolt and things of that nature, and that's communication. I mean, communication is absolutely critical when it comes to everything operating. I mean, if you're looking at a motor, I mean, everything's got to. I mean, even back in the day, I mean, they had computers on them that told them certain things, how when it was to spark and do all this other stuff for things to be the way they need to be. Even with the Formula One car that you're talking about. You said you've got all the components. I mean, you've got your wheels, you got your tires, you got your suspension, you got the motor, you've got the chassis of the car, you have all the stuff in the cockpit. You have the guy sitting in the cockpit, and he's the one that's driving the car. Mm-hmm. Well, when he comes into pit, after he's made some laps, he has to be able to tell them, hey, there's a vibration on the right front, or there's this going on here. The motor's not running the way that it should. This gauge is reading this, so forth and so on. Well, that vibration that you have in the front, if you don't communicate that to your pit guys for them to take the opportunity to look at that, that loose bolt that you're talking about, now becomes catastrophic because I didn't tell anybody. Now I go out and I'm in turn 4. That loose bolt comes completely out. Now I have no steering in my right front. Now I'm into the wall and I've just destroyed $1 million car.
Yeah, it's your senses. Communication within an organization are your senses. Yeah. It's essentially like, do I see that it's smoking and I'm going to ignore it? Do I see that I hear that it's rattling? How from paint and body, the feel and touch of a vehicle will tell you a lot about the quality of work someone's doing, right? I mean, it's just drastically different, right? But that's a sense of what is needed for that vehicle to be what it's meant to be. And if we ignore the senses, or we ignore the communications within an organization, or we don't communicate, again, catastrophic failure comes. Breakdown of an employee, breakdown of a part, which would be an equivalent of breaking down of a part. That the car will tell you about it. Classic mechanics will be like, this is much more useful for an engine, sometimes than other things, because you just know from the time you've talked to a lot of people, you understand what is going on with an organization, and experience yields your ability to actually tune into those things and listen well to each other, And
that's a key part of communication. And you're exactly right, is listening from both sides. Is, if someone's attempting to communicate and you have that, attention switch turned off, then you're not going to hear what they're saying. So now it's a mute situation. And what happens is they've tried to communicate it to you, and you're not listening. So now all of a sudden, that person that was trying to come to you and say, hey, I've got this going on, or this is what's happening, or hey, we need to take a look at this kind of thing. Now you've got the attention switch turned off. Now that person's like, well, you know what? They don't even care enough to even listen to me, and so now, and their whole attitude starts to change.
I was going to say, since the topic of today's episode is body work, and I'm the only body guy at the table. A fun fact, when you're doing body work, most people that aren't body men will usually use their eyes to see if they can find a discrepancy in the body work. And body man will close his eyes and use his hands to feel for the errors.
So, to see where the discrepancies might be.
Sure. You can't always see them, so
that's
you
right.
gotta feel them.
It's fantastic, Chris. Adding to the reality that's more than one sense. There's multiple senses involved, right? To detecting something, or to accepting something, or whatnot, and to work together towards something for unity. And that's kind of what I would say is it's kind of a working towards one another. It's kind of how unity works. It's not just existing in the same place. A lot of married people are just living together, right? There's a sense of like actually working towards one another, and the parts working together kind of are mutual things, right? So kind of, shift our final question here of now talk a little bit about business, most about business, a little bit about the church. There's lots of images in the scriptures that talk about the church, but I would say almost all of them are organic images. There's one that's a temple that's not organic, but almost all of them are organic vines, right? This kind of garden analogy. And then most importantly, the body part, right? So this is what it says in Corinthians 12. It says, the eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of you. The head to the feet, I have no need of you. On the contrary, the parts of the body that seem to be weaker are indispensable. And then it says on, because God put them there. Interesting. So, I preached this passage many times. And what it's saying to me here is every part God has placed on purpose into that church. Now, that doesn't mean that everyone's, equal in the same of role or anything like that, but it does say there's a particular sovereign reason why we're all together in that space. And there's an intention there to be a body, right? And some of us are hands, some of us are eyes, some of us are fingernails, I guess, or something. Some of us are less significant parts, but still part of the body, right? Everyone thinks they're a mouth, right? Everyone thinks they're supposed to be doing all the talking at church, right? So there's these kind of different parts that are all supposed to be working towards the body. So how do we build towards unity in the church? It's a little different, right? Because we really belong to one another, whether we like it or not. I mean, we're like put together, even if we didn't choose. Some people are born into the church, and it's just the family they know. So how do we work towards unity in the church, knowing that it's an even more elevated unity than even a business should be? How can we work towards unity in the church to become effective tools in the hands of the Lord too? How can we work towards that? What do you think?
I think, although different, there's a lot of similarities in, that analogy to what we've been talking about. And I think there's a failure in the church to recognize the value of members in their individual skills that God brought to your church.
Yeah.
It's often that I need a pastoral team that all needs to look the same.
Yeah.
And I value 5 things. Like I value children's ministry, preaching from the pulpit, events, whatever it is that church centers around. Yeah. That's like saying I only want to, focus on the engine. I only want to focus on the cushiness of the seats and the driver experience. You're going to get a subpar car out of that experience overall, but you negate. I think Tesla did this a little bit, like, hey, I negate the quality of some of the interiors. I focused on the battery. I focused on the technology. And then a lot of other things fell apart because they didn't value all the other parts of the vehicle, right? And then there was a lot of issues there. So you have to value every person that comes in the seat, not because you feel good about how you're going to check a box or number for your salvation call to the Lord, right? Kind of go, but more so that God sent me this person. They're probably critical to our mission. I need to think instead, what is their purpose? Why, how can I understand them? How can I use their skill in my body? Salvation is one thing, but Paul says, let's move beyond the elementary things into bigger and deeper things.
The closeness.
The first step is inventory, right? Like, hey, do we have all the parts for this build?
Yeah.
But man, it's like a step, but there are more important, like more skilled steps along the way that you're about to walk into.
Right.
And I think they just never leave the inventory stage.
Yeah.
Right? Like, great, we have that part. Let's put it on a shelf. Great, we have that member. Let's make sure we keep them. Is that the depth of the church? It is not.
Most of the time, it's what they
Right. But that's like us if we never built a car.
That's right.
We never did anything with it.
Yeah.
What is God telling you to go do? What's the design of your church on the earth? And how is that being accomplished? And how are you using the skills to the maximum of every member that walks in your door?
Yeah.
That's how businesses think.
Yeah.
And it should be how churches think.
It should
and
be.
Not in the terms of how can we make more money, but how can we build more kingdom?
Yeah. How can we grow the ministry? Like, I think again, this is typically the strength of lay-led churches that have leaders to this is a more of a contemporary model of church, right? Which is, I think, healthier here. This is one of the healthier things. Most of them are not healthy, but most of the healthier changes when there's more focus on membership, and the membership being a vital part of the mission, right? And because really that's what membership is. If you're a church, membership isn't a club dues payer, which is how most churches treat people. but you're actually part of the mission now. Not only are you saying yes to the church, I'm becoming part of you, I'm becoming part of the mission that you're on. So that's really what membership is, because the body's going somewhere. So if you think about it like that, it immediately becomes healthier. But it's the mentality that's wrong most of the time. Membership, like you're saying, Josh, like, they're here, they're tithing, good, let's keep them. That's not what a church should be thinking like. That's how a really dysfunctional business thinks.
Well, I'm a collection. Is your purpose collection?
Yeah.
Or is your purpose building? Or did Jesus tell you to go build the kingdom?
That's correct.
We're building the kingdom of God. Let your kingdom come and your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That's going to take some work.
That's right.
And we're going to have to go do stuff, and we're going to have to go build. Right. And thinking about church as building the kingdom is an orientation that they need, instead of, I am here to collect seats and members and make sure they don't leave, which would be like, I guess, a bank or a parts warehouse, or those are very different missions than GM building cars, right? Like it's just a very different mission. And I think the mission has gotten skewed because they don't understand what God is trying to do on the earth. He's trying to bring heaven to earth and transform it for Jesus and his 1,000-year reign. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing here. Part of that is going out and telling people to the end of the work, but then you take that and then you're meant to utilize those individuals, not just tell them.
Yeah.
You're just bringing them right in. Hey, we're building a wall here. Hey, you go on this and I'll give you a hammer. Are you good with a hammer? No. Oh, you're great at irrigation and water. Why don't you bring water to the people that we're working on the wall? That would save us a lot of time going back and forth. Like, what are you great at? What did God design in that person's heart to do?
Yeah.
What are their giftings?
Yeah.
And then let's use them.
Yeah.
It's so much unutilized. Yeah.
What's the original design?
Design.
What was it made for? Like, again, you got to get back to, I think, like you're saying at the start, Joshua, that some of you all kind of mentioned, is like the spark has to be there, right? The innovation has to be there, but the mission has to be consistent, right, in front. What might be one more other, since we're kind of running a little low on time now, but what might be one other thing that can help build unity in the church? Again, while there is some overlap with business, it's beyond that, right?
Yeah.
There's an elevation beyond that, right? How can we grow unity the way that Paul's saying God wants, with this parts, everyone has equal honor, but there's still one body, right? What's a way we can grow greater unity in the church to accomplish our mission?
Well, as Chris mentioned earlier, he said, this is, we had talked about this being, a podcast about, body and kind of paint kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think, if in his role as, what he does with the company, ultimately his ultimate goal is to put out a super slick, shiny paint job. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that everybody sees when it's all said and done.
That's right.
But what they don't see is all the stuff that's underneath all those other layers, all the things that has to be done that nobody wants to do.
That's right.
That squeaky wheel, that thing, that thing that everybody complains about. Chris can tell you more about it, but you've got to have every surface plays a role. The metal has a certain, has to be in a certain condition. You've got to do certain things to it. And then whenever you primer it, then you got to do a next step and a next step. And some of those steps are not fun.
Yeah.
The end result, when you look at it, it's like, wow,
awesome.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
But, and Chris can go into more detail. And there's certain things that make each one of those layers that Chris does, make them adhere to each other. Yeah. And, that's the unity for that body work. Yeah. Each surface has to be prepared properly to bond to each other to end up with this ultimate result, which is an absolutely amazing piece of work.
Yeah. And so if we go back, let's tie all that together. That's love.
That's right. Yeah.
And love is service.
That's correct.
Yeah. It's serving one another.
That's right.
That's right.
And Jesus says, who's the greatest among you? It is your servant, because that is love.
That's right.
And there's a lot of love it's a labor of love to go into paint body work, right? It's a lot of time.
Yeah.
And love takes time.
Yeah.
And so does service. And what really, he says, how will they know you? They'll know you by how you love one another. Yeah. How will they know the quality of a paint body shop? By looking at the product at the end.
Exactly.
And that only comes from love. It comes from service. A lot of work, right? In serving the ultimate target and goal. And that I think also is missing, because if you are just putting someone on a shelf, you're not really loving them.
That's correct.
Because love takes work, and it's messy, and it's hard.
That's right.
And it's hard.
And you don't see a lot of it, like Ray you're bringing up. You don't see what love looks like. You see the demonstrations of it. You don't see the heart behind it until the product's kind of revealed.
You see the final result.
That's right. So I think what you guys are getting at is like really the ultimate reality of unity is one, there has to be all these pieces involved. There certainly has to be these roles involved. There has to be this mindset that's shared. But ultimately what bonds it together, what pulls us together, what keeps us going towards one another is that bond of love. And that's a greater sense that the church has. That's why Jesus says they'll know you by your love. And that's really the greatest part of our witness. It's not how effective we are at a program, but that's not bad. It's really how well do these people love each other that's distinct from the world. It's not a commercial transaction they're trying to win here. They're trying to win me. They're trying to love me. And I think when they start to see that, and when the church starts to make that the mission, right, ultimately, that's the mission, suddenly everything else starts to fall into place in a lot of ways. And I think the body starts to care. It's like, again, if you got an injured foot, you care for the foot, right? If you got something that's severed, you go find something to put it back together, right? The reality is you love your body because it's yours. So I think, again, is that self-concern is still denying self because you're caring more about that part than other things. And so I think, again, it's this love that continues to care for itself, to bond itself, and to reveal what it really is, I think, too. And again, I think it's important. The best analogy I've ever read, actually, of the church is what it's supposed to be, is this combination of a vine and a pole. And the reality is, people, like some churches have been out and say, hey, we're just this organic church. We just kind of do things as they come. Well, if you did that in the garden, it would look like a wild, untamed mess.
Right.
And that's kind of what that church looked like. And then you got a lot of churches that are just basically businesses on wheels. They're just working and doing things mechanically. They don't have a whole lot of love for people. They're just kind of getting people in, getting people out.
They're just the pole.
The reality is the Bible's saying, no, you're a living organism that needs a pole, so you grow a certain way.
Structure and
there's structure and life, right? Like you're saying, it's not just the parts of the car. There's a spark, there's wind, there's breath, there's life going through that to move that. And again, we know that's the Holy Spirit, but it's also this form. The form is Jesus Christ, the person, this body himself. So it's not just the body, it's the life in that body that then shows the love. So I think when we see all those things coming together, we see unity in action, which is, I think, the coolest thing. Pretty hard to achieve. But when it happens, you're like, that's it, right? That's it. When the car comes off and everything's bonded together and it looks amazing, all that love underneath and on the outside comes together like, that's it. That's amazing. And then it starts up, it's kind of amazing. So you guys, great discussion today. Again, pretty rich and deep kind of subject to discuss, but I think super valuable to talk through, because really when people see something working well with heart, they're like, wow, that's different, right? I think some people expect a church to have heart, but not work well. I think some people expect a business to work well, but not have much heart. But when you put it together, like, whoa, that's different. And I think that's supposed to be God's people, right? Yeah. So hope this has been a podcast that's been encouraging to you if you've been listening today. And again, we want to finish by always encouraging you to go to our website, crossautomotiveroyale.com. And if there's business inquiries, there's partnerships and ministry that you're interested in, you can find everything online there, and feel free to reach out to us. Feel free to comment in the comment section or reach out to our podcast if you have any questions, things that you want to add. We want to invite your discussion. So until next time, till episode 11, signing off.